I'm Rachel Edidin.
And I'm Miles Stokes.
And we're the hosts of Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men, a weekly podcast all about the ins, the outs, and the retcons of our favorite superhero soap opera.
We're also the hosts of Rachel and Miles Review the X-Men,
which you're watching right now,
where we talk about the X books that come out each week.
Now this week we're going to be looking at the Soul X book of October 28th, 2015, but first I want to talk about a couple things that are going on right now that aren't comic books but are related closely to them. The first and biggest is the Secret Convergence on Infinite podcast, which launched this week. It's a 9-podcast crossover event that we're part of. The first episode is up right now at Fan Bros Show. We will drop a link to it below the video. I highly recommend checking it out. It's an amazing group of podcasts. We've crossed over and interacted and guested on each other's with a few of them. But yeah, it's an amazing lineup, and we highly recommend checking it out.
And the other thing we would definitely want to bring up is Vegas Valley Comics Fest, which we are going to be guests at, which is on November 7th, and you should totally come to.
Right, it is a free show. It's at Clark County Library, and we're going to be doing our second ever live episode there. It's also got a fantastic guest lineup, including folks like Jen Van Meter, Carla Speed McNeil, my favorite cartoonist ever, us. Yeah, we're going to be tabling, so come by, say hi. It's free. It's at a library. Libraries are amazing. Comics are amazing. Can't lose. And so, speaking of comics, let's review one.
Our single X book this week is House of M #4, written by Dennis Hopeless and Cullen Bunn, with art by Ario Anindito and colors by Matt Wilson.
And that actually wraps up the last of the X miniseries of Secret Wars, doesn't it?
It does indeed. We still have the Secret Wars core series, which is going to be stretching on probably for the rest of our lives. But as far as X-specific tie-ins, this is it. And in fact, next week, next Wednesday, we're going to see not only Uncanny X-Men #600, the end of Brian Bendis' run.
Whoa, finally?
Yeah, it was delayed like months.
Man.
But also Extraordinary X-Men #1, the beginning of Jeff Lemire's run, and the new X era. So we'll see how that goes. I'm intrigued.
That's odd timing, since Secret Wars itself hasn't actually ended.
Yeah, Marvel seems to have made the decision to keep that going, to sort of do, I don't know if it's a nod to the original Secret Wars, which kept going well after its consequences were felt, but from what I understand, it's making a lot of money, and Marvel likes money, as do most corporations.
I mean, it's a good central series. It's really good.
It is, yeah.
But I think I'm about ready for it to end. And speaking of endings, let's talk about House of M, since that's what we're supposed to be reviewing right now.
Yes, indeed. So this comic, I have really liked this series so far. I don't think it's my favorite Secret Wars book. That's actually probably Inferno by the other, one of the two writers of this book, Dennis Hopeless. But this has been a really good series, and this is a really good conclusion to it. I really enjoyed the way this wrapped up.
It's definitely still better than the original House of M.
Yes, that's quite true. So I really enjoy this issue in particular because we do get to see Magneto having been deposed by his jerk son, being forced to work with the humans, and seeing the sort of arrogance and regality of this version of Magneto being forced to compromise without being fully lost. This book, I think, more than anything else, is a character study of Magneto, which makes sense because the other writer, Cullen Bunn, just got done with the Magneto solo series, and I think it works well as a very different take on the character.
You know, I actually have a similar complaint about this as I have to a number of other Secret Wars series, and that's that it started out really strong, and the ending feels rushed. It feels like it hit, and suddenly there was a lot of plot to wrap up and not a lot of space. And we got a taste of the world, but the depth of it and the degree of chronolation and the degree of immersion for me really just reduced exponentially this issue.
That's interesting. I actually feel quite the opposite. For me, we've talked about distillation as opposed to simplification in, for instance, the Justice League cartoon. And for me, this comic does it. It distills House of M to what's important, at least for an X-Men reader, which is Magneto and the Royal Family and the Rebels.
I absolutely agree that it does that thematically. What I don't know is whether it really does that successfully narratively. The story feels messy to me. It with a miniseries, with a 4-issue miniseries, the plotting and construction has to be tight in ways that I don't think this one quite is. And it's a shame because it's two writers I absolutely love and an artist who I've consistently liked a fair lot, and a terrific colorist. And it's just not quite there. Like, I feel like given 2 more issues or a little bit more space, it could have been one of my favorites, but here it's clumsy. It doesn't quite go where I want it to go, and it's a shame because, again, it's overall a very strong series.
Okay. So yeah, read it and have your own opinion. It seems like the two of us seem to disagree almost completely.
Well, no, I mean, we both think that it's basically good. We just have different feelings about how it wraps up and how it resolves and what the defining characteristics are.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I do want to point out as a defining characteristic that I really enjoyed is seeing a version of Magneto who won from the start. We recently went through the X-Men vs. Avengers miniseries in the podcast, and we saw, essentially Silver Age Magneto coming back to varying degrees of narrative efficacy. But in this, what this reminds me of is if Silver Age Magneto just won really early on and didn't develop those worry lines he got being the headmaster at Xavier's, all of that pondering and self-doubt that came from almost killing Kitty Pryde in X-Men 150. And that's a really cool thing to see. I think that's something I really enjoy in an alternate universe comic, is seeing What If not only plot-wise, but character personality-wise.
Yeah, Magneto, who is that confident of his own certitude and his own entitlement, is always really interesting, because we've seen Magneto the idealist a lot, and this is something kind of different, and it's a fun direction to take the character.
Absolutely. So issue of the week is kind of a moot point, but Rachel, what's our panel of the week?
Our panel of the week is this one featuring Quicksilver. I think we've chosen a panel like this before, and obviously it's a trick that's been done before a lot. It's one that Quicksilver lends himself to. But I'm going to go ahead and say that it's one that's done a lot because it works really well. He's one of those few characters who can have an argument with himself physically in one panel. And it works well here, and the interaction and integration of the art and text is really effective, I think, to me.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's especially effective with the version of Quicksilver that we see in this issue in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So there you have it. That's the end of our Secret Wars X books. And by the way, sweet Halloween shades, man.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. I am so glad you noticed. They are among my favorites. So if you liked what you saw here, but think it would be better without video, you should check out our podcast, Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men. New episodes go up every Sunday at rachelandmiles.com, also on iTunes and Stitcher, and we have a really cool one this week.
Yeah, we are doing something we've been wanting to do since we started the show, which is we are interviewing Dennis Hopeless. As you all know, one of our very favorite X-Men writers, one of the two writers of the issue we reviewed today, along with X-Men Season 1, Cable and X-Force, the upcoming all-new X-Men, which is most of what we focus on. It's a really cool interview. Check it out.
Yeah, it's a great window into some of what's going to be coming in the new Marvel X line, too. That podcast, these video reviews, and everything at rachelandmiles.com are brought to you by our rad Patreon subscribers. We are an entirely listener-supported and ad-free project, and those are the folks who make it possible. If you want to join their ranks, you can do that at the link either above or below this podcast. Speaking of Patreon and Patreon projects, we have a kind of big deal shirt of the month thing going on. We have returned all of the previous shirts of the month to the store for the end of 2015. So those are there right now. Some of them are going to be sticking around after, some of them are not. So if you are one of the people who's been emailing us asking when the I'm not invulnerable when I'm blasting shirt is going to be back, right now, that's happening.
In the meantime, we will see you next week in the beginning of the all-new, all-different, and very misty X-Universe.
So, what's with the frog?
His name is Jason Funderburker.